All right, so we talked about applying the 16 rules for dimensioning that we covered in the last activity to hand drawings. And now I want to go over the process of doing the same thing but in Inventor. And you'll find that the software is fairly intuitive and understands a lot of the rules already kind of built in, which makes it nice. So to do that, I'm going to have you go back into the drawing sheets that we did for the Puzzle Cube project. And then with these, we're going to apply the dimensions necessary to produce and inspect this part. So dimensions are found underneath the Annotations tab. And the placement of dimensions can be done in several ways. I can use the General Dimension tool, and this is typically done for if I'm adding one single dimension to a drawing. But using that tool, there's a couple ways to do dimensions. I can select a line, click on it, drag out. Notice that it snaps to different locations. Typically, you go to the first location, and then left-click to place it on the drawing. If I'm not going to be editing any of the information on the dimension, I can turn this option off by unchecking this box and hitting OK. So every time I add a dimension, it just places it on the drawing. Another way to do it would be from like endpoint to endpoint. So from a dimension between this endpoint and this endpoint, and then I can drag that out as well. Last way would be if I'm doing it between, let's say, two lines. So a dimension between this line and this line, and I drag that out and place that on the drawing. Okay, so those are three ways to do it using just the general dimension as an option. Now let's talk about datum dimensioning and baseline dimensioning, which we covered in the PowerPoint. In Inventor, it doesn't call them datum dimension, it calls it baseline dimension. Same idea, where all the dimensions are off of one baseline or one line or data. So to do that, I'm going to click on baseline. And first I need to set what is going to be my baseline. So let's say I'm concerned about, let's say, the width of this object. I want to do all the dimensions associated with the width. I'm going to click this line as my baseline, and I want the dimension for here, here, and here. And I'm going to right click and continue. I can drag these out. Left click to place it. If I'm happy with that, right click to create. Right, so I set the baseline and all the dimensions reference back to this edge here. I can use baseline for, again, the height. So this would be my baseline. Continue, place those on the drawing. Right click, create. And I can do it again for the depth. And I'll do the depth in this case on the top view, but it can be placed on the right view as well. So those are all the dimensions I need for this particular multi-view drawing, and I place all of these using baseline or datum dimensioning. Let's go to the next sheet. I want to go over the process for doing chain dimensioning for those who choose to do it that way. Okay. So to do chain dimension, I'm going to click on chain, and I'm going to select the surfaces that I want to include within these dimensions. Right click, continue, and drag that out. I zoom in though, I notice that the center point, instead of using arrows, is using like dots, right? And that's a default setting in the 2016 version of Inventor. To change that, I can go to the Manage tab and go into my Styles Editor, hit the dimensions, and specifically default ANSI, which is the ones that are the default dimensions. Click on Display, and change the internal chain terminator to a filled arrow. Done. Yes. So I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to click on Annotate tab, chain to do chain dimensioning, select my surfaces, right click, continue, and then drag it out. Notice this time I have arrows on the inside, and that's what I want. If I'm happy with that, right click and hit create. Now, we talked about two methods of doing chain dimensioning, and really we would like to have an overall dimension as well. So if I put an overall dimension here, I've over-dimensioned this drawing. So I want to remove one of these dimensions. I'm going to select that and hit delete, and click on the general dimension between these points here. So we don't want the chain to add up to the overall dimension and then include the overall dimension as well. So this would be the preferred or method 2 of chain dimensioning for you guys to do. The rest of this drawing is pretty basic. You could use chain dimensioning to do the height and the depth, but when I do, I'd have to delete one of the dimensions to do the overall. And so I'm just going to place them using general dimensions. So that would be a location dimension, and this is my overall dimension for the height of the object, overall dimension for the depth of the object, and then that location. So I want to go back to this drawing sheet, add the proper dimensioning using the 16 rules and guidelines to each of the 5 sheets, and then when you're done, I want you to save this sheet. We're almost ready to turn this in. There's a couple things, statistics that we're going to do to finish up this project, but the next step is for us to add all the dimensions. I'll give you the next 2 days to do that, and then we'll move on to the next activity.